It's your fangirl Tally, and it's time for another Editor Hubby request. We're going to be checking out some Elden Ring lore. Metyr, the Mother and the Child. This is from Square Table Gaming, so let's check it out.
If you're familiar with our Elden lore series, you know I've never been shy about sharing my thoughts on the Fingers and what I believe to be their ultimate betrayal of our Tarnished. The Fingers are said to lead us down the path of becoming Elden Lord, but in truth, it's grace that guides us, and grace which pushes us to the foot of the Erdtree, where we face Morgott and attempt to take the Elden Throne. At this point, the Fingers are at a loss for how to open the Erdtree, and claim to be attempting to commune with the Greater Will. I've always believed this is a farce, and the Fingers push Tarnished to fight the demigods because they believe it to be an impossible task. To put it plainly, I think the Fingers are deceptive, and much like White Mask Vare, I never thought they had our best interest at heart. Just to be clear, that's where my opinions stop lining up with Vare's. Now that I've played Shadow of the Erdtree and learned the secrets of Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, my suspicions have been validated. Because as it turns out, no one, man or finger, truly knows the path forward envisioned by the Greater Will, if there was one at all. Today, we will unravel the truth of Metyr and the Fingers. Welcome to Elden Lore, our weekly series where we investigate the people, places, and fingers of the Lands Between and the Land of Shadows.
And fingers.
Whether this is your first time on the channel or you've been following us for the last couple years, thanks for stopping by. As I dig deeper and deeper into the Land of Shadows, I find more interesting stories and backgrounds I want to explore. So if you don't want to miss any of our videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel.
There's some really creepy art, guys.
Also, feel free to let us know what you'd like us to explore next. I love seeing what the community is interested in and making content to answer their questions. We have a Discord where fans come together to talk about the lore of the Lands Between and Land of Shadows.
The lore,
so you can check that out as well.
The weirder this game gets.
If you end up enjoying the video, please consider giving us a little algorithm boost. But your viewership is always enough for us, so no pressure. With that said, let's get back to a story that stretches back to the beginning, when the Greater Will first visited the Lands Between. According to Hyetta, the Maiden of the Three Fingers, in the beginning, there was only the one Great. Then the Greater Will stepped in. The Greater Will fractured the one Great, which led to life as we know it in the Lands Between. From here, the Greater Will saw the need to impose some level of order across the land, and sent a falling star containing the Elden Beast down to become the Elden Ring. This was known to us through the description of the incantation Elden Stars. The Elden Remembrance gives us more background on the Elden Beast. It was the vassal beast of the Greater Will, and living incarnation of the concept of order. So it was that the Greater Will created both life and, through its vassal, order. What exactly this order was, and when it started, is up for debate. But if we consider that Placidusax was an Elden Lord in the time before the Erdtree, we can make some assumptions. We know that the Dragon Lord's god fled the Lands Between, and if we look at the way he waits in the heart of the storm beyond time, his head seemed to be forming a position very similar to that of the Fingers when they're attempting to commune with the Greater Will. If we assume the Greater Will was Placidusax's god, then we can also assume that the Elden Beast must have been sent to the Lands Between after the Greater Will fled. However, the Elden Beast does not lead the rulers of the Lands Between. It's a source of power, the very Elden Ring itself. So the question used to be, where did the Fingers come from? And how did they know what the Greater Will wanted for the land? And now we have some answers. Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, much like the Elden Beast, is a child of the Greater Will, also sent down to the Lands Between from space. The remembrance of the Mother of Fingers tells us, the mother of all two Fingers and Finger Creepers was in turn a magnificently gleaming daughter of the Greater Will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the Lands Between. It would seem the Mother of Fingers was the first of these children to reach the surface, and perhaps that's how Placidusax knew how to commune with the Greater Will before the time of the Erdtree. It learned how from its own fingers. This remembrance allows us to create the Staff of the Great Beyond, which is described as a staff fashioned from the tail fingers of Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, and the microcosm raised aloft over the crux they form. It tells us, the Mother receives signs from the greater will from the beyond of the microcosm. Despite being broken and abandoned, she kept waiting for another message to come. Aside from this staff, we can also create the Gazing Finger, which is described as the head of Metyr, the Finger Mother,
God.
wielded as a weapon without modification. From within the center of the fingerprint that wrinkles the creature's foremost protrusion, a tiny wart-like eye gazes vacantly into the beyond. These descriptions lead me to believe that in the time before the Erd Tree, living beings were actually able to discern instructions from the Greater Will, thanks to its first daughter, Metyr.
Wow.
She would communicate with her parent through the microcosm, which we can see on her staff, sending and receiving messages in turn. So what changed? We can't say for sure what caused the Greater Will to flee the lands between. Perhaps it got bored with its creations asking for assistance in how to live their lives and rule their lands. Or maybe it took issue with Baal and Placidusax doing battle over the current order of the world and was disappointed with Placidusax for not ending Baal outright. Whatever the reason, I believe the Greater Will sent down the Elden Beast to bring order to the lands between, so it would no longer have to interact with its creations. It would impose order through a god that would ascend using the instructions provided to Metyr and passed down to her children. If I were to speculate, this could be why Metyr suddenly has her connection to the Greater Will severed, able to send messages through the microcosm, but not able to receive any word back.
Wow, that's messed up.
When speaking with Enya, she says the Greater Will has not abandoned the realm, nor the life that inhabits it. But we know that Enya is getting her information from the Two Fingers, an entity that has a vested interest in making sure the Tarnished think it is all-knowing and able to provide them with the path forward. In the intro cinematic of Elden Ring, we're told that the Lands Between was abandoned by the Greater Will due to the Shattering, which would contradict this statement, but the Japanese translation clears this up. The direct translation tells us, Marika's children, demigods, received fragments of the Elden Ring. That power corrupted them, causing the Shattering War, where there was no lord at the end of the battle. They were abandoned by the Greater Will. This more directly implies that it was only the demigod children of Marika who were abandoned, and not the land as a whole. However, both of these explanations are directly contradicted by Count Ymir in Shadow of the Erdtree. This scholar of all things fingers tells us,
there never was any hope. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Marika herself, and the fingers that guided her.
This strongly implies that by the time the Fingers were guiding Marika as an Empyrean, they were already cut off from communicating with the Greater Will through their mother, meaning it had abandoned the land long ago, and they were now trying to guide Empyreans the best they could, without a full understanding of what they were supposed to do next. Thanks to MoxieWatts for pointing out these base game contradictions, as well as providing me with the Japanese translation from Reddit user The Deep Dark Abyss. Once Metyr's sibling reached the Lands Between, the Greater Will washed its hands of this place, and left to explore the cosmos. I'm referring to the Elden Beast as Metyr's sibling because the legendary incantation, Elden Stars, tells us it is said that long ago, the Greater Will sent a golden star bearing a beast into the Lands Between, which would later become the Elden Ring. This makes the Elden Beast the second being sent to the Lands Between by the Greater Will.
Right, okay, because the fingers were
This
the
then
first.
left a hole in the future of the Lands Between. Who would ascend to godhood and create the Erdtree, and how was this done? Given that we do have the secret rite scroll which outlines how to become a god, I believe these were the instructions left to Metyr. We know the rite within the scroll works because Marika ascended to godhood, as did Miquella, even if his method left him bodiless. So the only logical origin point of the secrets contained within the scroll would be Metyr, the only being capable of truly communing with the Greater Will. However, I believe this scroll could be interpreted multiple ways, and without the Greater Will's guidance, Metyr simply decided for herself what it meant, and passed these words down to her children, the Two Fingers. During his questline, Count Ymir shares some interesting information with us. He tells us Mikolas saw that his roots were mired in madness, and that the fault lies with the Mother, implying Marika. But after speaking with him again, he elaborates.
Call what I said, that Marika and the fingers that guided her were unsound from the start. Well, the truth lies deeper still. It is their mother who is damaged and unhinged. The fingers are but unripe children, victims in their own right. We all need a mother, do we not? A new mother, a true mother who will not give birth to further malady.
By following this quest, we see how Ymir's mind has truly unraveled.
Wow.
But in this, we can assume he's correct. The fingers simply listen to their mother, and if their mother is blankly staring into space, incapable of discerning what comes next without the guidance of a god who's no longer there, then the fingers simply have to wing it and make assumptions about what we need to do. I believe that this is what sets into motion the events of Elden Ring. The shattering is brought about because each Two Fingers has their own idea of who should be Elden Lord, and each has the ears of their own demigods.
Right.
Ranni's fingers see her as the next vessel for the Elden Ring, and so she slays them to avoid her fate. Other fingers hold the power of their demigod's great runes, and whether dead or alive, they're now unable to communicate. The fingers of the Round Table Hold saw the danger of a tarnish changing the world to suit their own whims, and intentionally misdirect us, trying to play off the guidance of grace as part of their own machinations. Just as everyone in the lands between fumbles for meaning, so too do the fingers, who claim to be envoys of the greater will. Without their god's guidance and abandoned by their mother, they're simply trying their best to find a way forward, whatever that may be. Perhaps this is why they make one last attempt to communicate with the greater will once we reach the foot of the Erdtree. The Cypherpada and the Coded Sword both show us how the fingers communicated through light, and Ratatoskr has previously mentioned how he believes that the reason it would take thousands of years for the fingers to receive an answer from the greater will is due to how long it would take light to travel the cosmos to their grandparent. After all, the fingers don't seem to have the ability to use the microcosm in the way their mother does. I like this theory, but I'd layer on top of it that even if the greater will did receive the message, I don't believe it has any interest in answering. With all this said, there was a set of fingers born to Metyr that had another plan. Instead of moving forward, they would guide a new lord to move back.
What?
The Finger Creepers and Two Fingers are both born from Metyr, so it stands to reason that the Three Fingers were as well. If each set of fingers is fumbling for meaning and answers, as their connection to the greater will has been disconnected, then it makes sense that the Three Fingers were brought into this world with their own views. The Three Fingers see the insanity of eternally reaching out to a god that abandoned its creations, begging for meaning and direction, and instead believe the entire experiment itself is the issue. In the estimation of the Three Fingers,
That is never
the
easy
problem
to
started
watch.
with the greater will fracturing the one great, so the only solution is to burn it all away, return to one. There's no reason to reach out to the greater will, if we simply return from whence we came, and their Lord of Frenzied Flame is capable of doing just that. Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, first daughter of the greater will, is the original abandoned child of a god. Her entire purpose was to act as a mouthpiece for the greater will, and as the world grew, she sent her children to act as these mouthpieces as well. Her connection to the greater will allowed her to receive messages, and the Two Fingers' connection to her meant they could relay these messages as well.
Thing. Who came up with that?
Unfortunately, the fickle nature of gods affects even their own offspring, just as we saw from Marika and the way she treated her children. If anything, the story of Metyr proves that the world envisioned by the greater will no longer matters. What comes next is up to our tarnished. The future will be crafted by man, not gods. Whether we choose to repair the Elden Ring and create a world with our own ideals,
Please, this is gross.
abandon the world created by the greater will in order to travel the stars with Our Lady, or burn it all back to one. The future is not crafted by those above, but by those below. Those that were left to clean up the mess of a god that couldn't be bothered to oversee its creation. We can only hope that Metyr finds some kind of solace after our battle with her, as she escapes into the microcosm. I believe she could have done this at any time, but chose not to, as she didn't want to leave her children the same way that she was left behind. But when your options are to be put to the blade or flee, it would seem escaping was the better option. Perhaps she will one day find the greater will, and discover why it abandoned her, and the land it cultivated. Thank you for joining us for our dissection of Metyr, the Mother of Fingers. Why do you believe the greater will left the world it created behind? When do you think Metyr's connection to the greater will was severed? Was she still able to communicate with the two fingers of the lands between, after the Land of Shadow was sealed away? Or does her plane exist alongside it? Why did the greater will choose for its daughter and envoy to take the shape of fingers? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below.
I have absolutely
Don't forget
no
to like,
idea.
subscribe, hit the bell, and set notifications to all so you never miss out on any of our
very
lore dives.
heavy one for me, guys.
We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.
I don't know, guys. It was all extremely heavy for me. This was just seemed very deep and very, I don't know, just, yeah, a lot. It was very good and just heavy. Please remember to like this video. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. As always, hit that notification bell with your notifications turned on so that you know when we drop a new video. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.